Carolina This Week with Tim McGinnis.
Good morning. I hope you're having a great weekend. We have 3 subjects and only 2 guests this week. We're going to talk about cystic fibrosis and some events coming up to support the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation in our area. We're also going to talk politics, and we're going to talk about organ donation. Those last 2 subjects we're going to talk about with Myrtle Beach City Councilman Randal Wallace, who lost his brother last year very suddenly and knows all about organ donation. Here's News Channel 15's Lisa Edge.
Anywhere I went, he went with me when he was growing up, when I'd go over there. So, you know, I got a lot of really happy and good memories of him. And that was him riding around on the boat.
Inside Randal Wallace's home, you can easily find pictures of his younger brother, Keith. 16 years his junior, Wallace says before Keith's death, they were beginning to have more things in common.
He was a big-hearted guy, but he was a lot of fun. I mean, he hunted and he liked to fish, and he was an outstanding golfer.
Keith's life ended suddenly last August. While with a friend, he complained of an exploding headache. He was suffering from a brain aneurysm at only 25 years old. At the hospital in Columbia, he was put on life support.
It was a complete and total shock to us because there was no inkling that anything was wrong.
Wallace says while at the hospital, they learned Keith signed up to donate his organs. His request saved the lives of others, and Wallace would like to see more do the same.
The longer somebody lives without a kidney, you know, they got to do dialysis twice a week. Their quality of life is pretty low, and if this is a way, you know, to change that, and then we need to get the awareness up so people will, you know, sign up for to be a donor.
Joining us now is Myrtle Beach City Councilman Randal Wallace. Thanks for coming in to talk with us about this subject. It's obviously something that you know all about firsthand.
Yeah, something that I never dreamed that I would end up knowing about firsthand. You know, it's one of those things that you just can't really describe the shock that hit us in August when this happened.
Yeah, so sorry about that. That's just tough to lose somebody that suddenly, and then you're faced with decisions that you never thought you'd be making.
Especially, yeah, for somebody that young. You know, it's in the back of your mind when you've got a elderly parent or a grandparent or something is one thing, but when it's your brother that's 25 years old and 16 years younger than you are, you kind of figure it's going to be the opposite way around if anything ever happens. So yeah, it was a total surprise.
Obviously, when you lose somebody like that, your world is turned upside down all of a sudden. How was the subject of organ transplant broached to y'all from doctors?
Well, when I got there, it was pretty late. Keith had collapsed somewhere around 4 o'clock and had a brain aneurysm that burst, and so it came on him very fast. And by the time I got there, he was in the room. He was on the ventilator, and it was pretty clear, though. You know, a lot of my family that had been there with him all day really had not come to that conclusion. And a nurse talked to me about, hey, we can do these tests, what they thought, but they were like, legally we can't say. And I was like, well, you need to get some grief counselors or somebody in here to talk to my family, because Keith was the only child of my stepmother, and my father, he was a late in life child for him, and you know, they just adored Keith. I mean, he was the center of the world, you know.
Sure.
And once that started, the person that came in that was the grief person actually worked for LifePoint. And at one point I talked to her in the hall about, you know, just the two of us, about whether or not he would have been a candidate for organ donation, that I would have been in favor of it, but wasn't the decision maker and didn't know. Mm-hmm. And she just pulled out a sheet and said he had signed up on his own, and that, you know, it was a legal document, but that they wanted, you know, us to be in concurrence with it, and we didn't know. We had no idea that Keith had ever signed up for that, but it really relieved us to know that he had, and so we kind of had an idea where he would want to go if this went the way it was fairly clear at that point that it was going to be.
Yeah, but still tough, I imagine, when they bring it up and you got so much on your mind, and now you're thinking about this person who was just fine a few hours beforehand, and all of a sudden you're having to think about pieces of your flesh and blood going to other people.
Yeah, you're in just like in a total state of shock, you know. Mm-hmm. And you still, and especially was true of my father and my stepmother and Casey, his girlfriend. you know, they'd been with him all day, and, you know, I kind of walked in, and so it was like, we're still hoping against hope, but it was, you know, it was getting pretty clear that, you know, there just wasn't going to be any chance of that. But yeah, it's pretty stunning, and I can remember the first thing I told my dad on the phone when he called me to tell me. I was like, there's no way. This is just, I just saw him. I just seen him on the Sunday before, and he was fine.
Sure.
So,
now you find out that he's an organ donor, and that a part of him is going to go to other people and help them. And 5 other people?
I think it was 5. There was one organ that couldn't be used, but all the rest of it, I think was so that would be, I think it would be 5 that were directly saved. One of the recipients was here in South Carolina, and then there was the tissue stuff was as much as 50 were affected. So yeah, it's really kind of amazing how many people are affected. And, you know, and I didn't realize that until this, just how much, you know, if your body is in good shape and they can do it, how many people can be affected and helped.
Yeah, here's a young man, 25 years old. I imagine, you know, they probably get, if it's an elderly person's body, they may not be able to do as much with the organs, but here's a young, I guess, vital person, and all of a sudden.
Yeah, Keith was a 3-sport athlete. So, and I can remember sitting there looking at him while he was on the ventilator and thinking, wow, he looks, because he looked like he was laying there asleep, and he looked like $1 million. I mean, he played football and basketball in high school, and he was an outstanding golfer, and he liked to hunt and fish. So he was in pretty good shape. And it kind of hit me this week when we were doing this. A lady came to the city council meeting that had gotten a kidney transplant 17 years ago, and she looked very healthy and hearty, and you know, she was a delightful lady. And I thought, you know, somebody could probably live with Keith's organs another 60 years. I mean, he's 25, 26 years old, and was in good shape other than this brain aneurysm problem. So somebody's could have possibly a very long life.
Yeah,
thanks to this.
You'd think 50 or 60 years ahead of somebody who's 25 years old. That's.
Yeah, and in the case of like this lady, you know, her situation was very dire 17 years ago. But like I said, with this one kidney she's got, she looked healthier than me, I think. So.
Well, did that help your family in the grieving process? Did you ever think about at any point that, hey, maybe, you know, in a way, part of him is living on through somebody else?
I think it certainly helped me with it, and I think that the rest of them, you know, we're interested in meeting them. I've now talked to my stepmother and my dad and Casey. They're all kind of interested in meeting the person the recipients of it, I guess. So I think in that way, you know, you do feel like part of him is going to live on for a long period of time, and that's I think it really it helps you get through it.
And it's pretty simple in South Carolina to become an organ donor. You can pretty much do it just when you go to renew or get your driver's license for the first time, and you can become a part of that registry. They'll put it on your driver's license. Go and check that on the registry, on the donor registry. In fact, you can find a link that'll tell you a lot about this and includes Randal's story and his brother Keith's story by going to your website, carolinalive.com. Do a search for organ donation. Lisa's story will pop up there. We have some links inside of that story that will take you and walk you through, and you'll learn everything you need to know about organ donation.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's a good thing. I mean, you can help a lot of people. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's a tough loss, but I guess if there's any silver lining, it is that he saved some other people.
That's and Keith was a big-hearted guy, you know, and so I kind of feel like, you know, in that way we respected his wishes, and he's able to do something to help other people, and that I think he would have been happy with that, you know, things considered. But
well, you are Myrtle Beach City Councilman Randal Wallace too, and I want to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll put on your politician hat. We'll talk some Myrtle Beach politics and talk about that seat that you ran for, the 7th Congressional District seat, and talk a little bit about what's going on in Congress right now.
Yes, sir.
All right. Take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Carolina This Week. We're talking with Myrtle Beach City Councilman Randal Wallace. We're talking about organ donation, and we're going to talk about politics in just a few minutes. But let's wrap up our conversation about organ donation. In case you missed the top of the show, talk about your brother Keith, who died suddenly at 25 years old last August. When it came down to that decision time and time to let go, that type of thing, a lot of family members, I would think, might have a tough time saying,
Oh yeah, it's
you know, you can take parts of my son or daughter, loved one's body, and give it to somebody else. I imagine that's tough.
It's a very tough decision, because you I think really what could be the hardest thing is even after we had been declared brain death had happened, he still looked, you know, like he was just laying there asleep, like I said. And
right.
And one of the things about making the decision that was, if you could say, easier on us, because one of my big fears was, okay, we're going to have to decide to unplug him and let him go. And my dad and my stepmother and my brother's girlfriend Casey, they were going to have to sit there and watch that, and I didn't want, you know, that was just
right.
the most horrific thing that you could think of to have to do. And because he had to stay on life support for another day while they arranged, because it's fairly technical about arranging the recipients and all that, you know, we were able to let all of us had time with him, you know, alone, or like my dad and I and his girlfriend, we all sat with him for a little bit. And then we had a room full of people, because Keith was pretty popular, and we probably had 30 or 40 people who had shown up and were in the waiting room. And we let all of his friends come back from high school and college, and everybody had time with him while he still looked, you know,
right.
like he was living. But it's a pretty tough decision.
I imagine if I was in that seat, though, maybe the thought would cross my mind that, are they just keeping him alive? You know, are they just telling me that this is the situation when really they just want to harvest?
And you know, and people have said that to me,
yeah.
and I can tell you, having lived through this now, that I think that in Keith's case, certainly, and you know, you had a 26-year-old kid. No doctor's going to sit there and let a 26-year-old die, and everything that could possibly have been done to help Keith was done, above and beyond. You know, that was our experience, above and beyond what was really necessary. At one point, you know, they had 2 more tests that they wanted to do that I sat in with him on, but they had to have his body temperature back to a normal thing, and it was starting to drop. And they wrapped him in this stuff to try to warm him back up so that he could do, and that's, you know, that's kind of tough thing to even go back over, but you know, they did what they could do to make sure that there was no chance that his brain was still functioning. And so I can tell anybody this, that they're going to do everything they can do to save that patient they've got. And once that's done, you know, then there's no reason to let all those organs go with them, you know, if you've got a chance to help as many people as Keith was able to do.
I was looking into this a little bit, because another question I had was, what about religion? I imagine that there have to be religions out there that would say that the body needs to be intact for burial, that type of thing. And when I looked into it, Japanese Shinto is about the only religion that does not support harvesting organs. And I don't know anybody that practices Shinto, nothing against Shinto, but
No.
so it seems to me that religion's not even a barrier in this.
No, everything that I have, all the major religions are in favor of it. And I think, you know, you can kind of look at it, God's given us, in my opinion, the ability to do it.
Yeah.
So
it's a tremendous gift to give somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that is, so I think that in a way you're honoring
yeah.
the higher power to do it. But
And I talked to you about this before too, when it came down to having an open casket, because obviously here's a young man who was in the prime of his life. You might want to have, people might want to have one last chance to see him, but if they're going to take organs out, are you going to be able to do that?
You know what? We had an open casket for Keith, and he looked, you know, he looked like him, you know, laying there. I mean, they did a good job of making him presentable. So you can have an open casket, and there's, you know, I actually take some of a bone too in your arm, and they'll ask you about that, but they'll have a prosthesis in there, so you won't notice it, which is,
Yeah.
but he looked fine. So I would tell anybody, you know, you can have an open casket if it's a situation, especially one like Keith, where it wasn't an accident, it was an aneurysm that burst. You know, so as long as that's the case, and you should have no reason. Organ donation is not a reason or casket not being open is not a reason to not do it.
Yeah, I imagine, you know, there might be some people watching this morning saying, boy, what a morbid subject to talk about here, but talk to one of those people that received a heart, received a kidney, received tissue after a severe burn, something to that degree. You're going to learn pretty quickly that it's not necessarily morbid, it can be uplifting too.
And you know, 2 things. I have been contacted this week by several donor recipients that just wanted to thank one lady, like the lady I was telling you, she drove to the council meeting. She'd seen it in the newspaper and she came. Several people want to explain to me or talk to me about things that you can do, the donor families and donor recipients get to do at MUSC with the program. So these people have been reaching out to me all week out of gratitude to whoever had helped them and say thank you to our family for what Keith had done. So that's been an uplifting thing. Has made me feel better about what has been a pretty sad few months. And I tell you another thing that I've liked being able to do is just a few minutes that you get to talk about him. A lot of people didn't know Keith because he had not grown up in Myrtle Beach. My dad had moved away to Manning, and so a lot of people knew my oldest brother Thomas and me here in Myrtle Beach. But I've been able to introduce him to, talk about him before we did the proclamation. I had some pictures of him up. One of them sitting up on a basketball goal when he was in high school, and just get to talk about what a good guy he was. And it's just a chance to kind of put a face to the issue and a face to when they say Randal Wallace's brother died, that people get to know him. So if you can enjoy something, just a chance to share him with the public has been rewarding for me.
Well, Councilman, thank you for coming in and talk about this today. We were going to talk politics, but I think we used up all of our time.
Oh, well.
So you have to come back some other time and do that.
I would love to.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Stay with us when we come back and can talk about a wine tasting event and a walk going on at the Market Common to benefit cystic fibrosis. Stay with us. We'll be right back.